Hi, everybody, and welcome to Eye on the Eagles, your all-access pass to all things Avila Athletics. We are live from Tanner's at Redbridge on the day after the Super Bowl. Welcome to the show. I'm Sports Information Director Tim Hackett. Our first guest on this Monday, head baseball coach Matt Carpenter. Welcome to the show, Carp.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
3 non-conference series officially in the books to kick off your 2024 season. How are you and the team feeling after 12 games?
I think depending on what weekend you would have asked us, our answers would have been a lot different. It's been kind of a unique non-conference. All of our series have been sweeps. Unfortunately, we were on the losing end of 2 of those, and we're fortunate enough to be on the winning end of 1 of them. But I do think that we've learned a little bit about our team. You know, we talked when I was on here last time about how many new guys we have, and so there's a lot of things to learn, a lot of guys to see. Kind of find out where they are in their development. It's been I do feel like we've learned a lot. Like I said, I would have liked to have won a little bit more while we were learning, but we've learned some things that we're doing well, some things that we need to tweak, and honestly some things that maybe need to be completely retooled.
Sure.
I think it's been big for us that a lot of the young guys that we know we're going to lean on and count on later on in the year, we were able to get their feet wet and get them some experience in the right situations. And I think some of those guys, how we use them throughout the year will expand. But I think it was big for us coming out of that a lot of those young guys got a taste, and we got to see how some of our transfer guys perform here. And just learn a lot about the personalities and stuff. We also mentioned the last time I was on that I really want to one of our goals is just to compete as many times as we can, and that we think the wins will come. And I would say of the 12 games, 10 of them have been competitive.
No doubt.
Even some of the losses, tying run at the plate when the game's over. So we've learned. We've learned that we can compete, and like I said, there's things that hopefully the guys have taken away from it, and things that we've taken away from it too that we need to, in varying degrees, change. Like I said, tweak, maybe retool, or just keep doing. So definitely, it was fun to win the 4 against Dordt for sure. That was kind of obviously the highlight of the non-con so far, but a lot to work with, and I'm excited about the changes that we can make and the way that we can react to what we've learned so far.
I think it's great to be able to still have that positive mindset because we know that sweeps don't happen very often. And feel like I should say that, but as you said, we have seen 3 to start off this season, and I feel that that's rare, especially over a 4-game set
sure.
in this program's history. Regardless of which direction.
Yeah.
So it is weird that we have seen that. It's unique that we have seen that.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to sweep a doubleheader.
Yeah.
And then just for 3 series to end up in a sweep is kind of outside the norm for sure. So,
what are some of those good takeaways that you have seen from your team over the first 3 seasons, three series of the season?
Our starting pitching has been good. Our starting pitching has actually been really, really good in most of the games, I feel like. Defensively, we're playing. Honestly, Tim, truthfully, on the infield, I think our defense has been as good as it's been in the last few seasons. From an outfield standpoint, we're running with a different outfield setup than we thought we were going to have all fall. With Neville's having to take a semester off, and Robbie Cable obviously got hurt the other day. DeWitt Nunnery's taking a semester off as well. So 2/3 of the guys that we thought we were going to roll with for the season that had us really excited about our outfield, we don't have. But that being said, it's not that we don't feel like we have guys that are capable out there. I feel like we have a lot of guys that were really capable, but we're having to push them into a spot that we didn't want to push them into just yet. So that we've got some work to do defensively in the outfield, but from a defensive standpoint and a starting pitching standpoint, I feel like we've done really well, which that's kind of the 3-legged stool of how we think we have to build our team is pitching, defense, and speed. And so that pitching and defense has been there for the most part. The starting pitching and our defense, I would say, are definitely some of the positives that we've taken out of it. And there's some fight in this team, and that's man, in this conference, we've talked to them before about, like, I don't care which side of it you're on. In the KCAC, if you're up by 7 runs, that's a close ball game.
Sure.
It can change like that.
Sure.
So you got to have that mentality to keep getting up off the mat. And even though some of the times we haven't been able to close the deal, even one game this week, a 2-run home run, I believe, in the 6th inning to tie the ball game up. You know, we can get up off the mat, and that's going to be big for us. So I would say those are kind of the big takeaways on the positive end that I would point to.
Let's hit the pitching first, because that was something that we knew about, something that you and I talked about last time you were on the show, but also every preseason hit that you had to do in the week prior to that. We talked about it was kind of a given that the starting pitching would look different this year compared to the last couple, just in terms of the personnel. Doesn't mean they couldn't be effective or anything like that, but just in terms of the names and numbers on the jersey, it's different than what we've seen over the last couple of years. And to your point, I mean, that was a big takeaway for me after Sagu, and then getting to see all 4 games against Dort in person. That really kind of drove that point home even further to me, how successful y'all starting pitching has been to this point of the season, almost with no exception. It's pretty. I mean, obviously there's going to be some here or there, but almost to a man, it's been really, really strong so far this year, even with guys going shorter than perhaps other teams might expect. But at this point of the season, you've got 4 or 5 strong innings out of a number of guys multiple times.
Yep, you know, I referenced last time, you know, the idea of like giving guys a job to do and just asking them to do their job. And the number of times I've been able to go to the mound, and when I take the ball from the starter, or when I go tell that starter in the dugout, hey, you're done for the day, the amount of times I've been able to say, hey, you did your job, that's encouraging to me. It really is. And, you know, a couple of the new arms that we've got in Cash and Schrons and Logan Empson have turned in multiple good starts for us. Gio Armas is an arm that we're really excited about. He was unable to go this past weekend, which hurts us because he's such a good catcher as well. But we had guys that stepped in and did a very admirable job for him behind the plate. But you know, Gio was a guy that has probably thrown our best game of the year so far. We didn't have him this weekend. But then even a guy like Alex Walton, who's been with us for a few years, very limited opportunities to start throughout his career, and he absolutely made the most of it this weekend, 5 scoreless. So yeah, the amount of times that I've been able to say, hey, you did your job, that's encouraging. Again, good starting pitching is huge. It gives you that feeling that you're in the game the whole time. And you know, unfortunately, we saw some pretty good starting pitching against us as well. But yeah, starting pitching has absolutely been there, and I think we've had some good outings from some of our guys in the bullpen too. And then I would say some of our woes in the bullpen are you know, a matter from time to time of a guy not getting the job done, and from time to time a matter of probably us needing to manage it a little bit differently, which is hopefully a part of this learning process as well.
It's definitely something that will come with something that you will grow into as the season goes on.
I hope so, yeah.
It's something that, I mean, just something that you have to experience and learn for everybody, pitching coach, head coach, and the pitchers themselves. Like when are you going to take them out? It's something that we talk about on the broadcast all the time. Is, you know, we try to speculate just for something to talk about, if nothing else. And I often don't get it right because we're thinking something differently. You're seeing things that I'm not seeing, usually for the better, and just diagnosing things in a different way. I don't envy that task that you have to do as the head coach, because it is often not an easy task and not an easy decision to come to.
Well, don't feel bad, because I often don't get it right either. So, you know, but we're getting there. And it is a part of the learning process, and that's, you know, you never like to lose baseball games, obviously, but I always tell the guys after we lose, you know, I ask them, you know, can you, as you're going home, like, I don't want anybody to dwell on a negative game or anything, but like, think of something that you can get better from this experience today. And I challenge the coaches and myself to do the same thing. And that was kind of my big takeaway from this weekend, is, you know, how we got beat out of the bullpen multiple times this weekend. So how do I need to do something, approach that a little bit differently? And that's an easier thing to come up with a solution when now you have the body of evidence to evaluate. So,
previous weekend against Dora, I'd be remiss if we don't dive into that a little bit further, because it was 4-game sweep towards your team to get on the board this season. Yeah. Really impressive stuff from you guys top to bottom. I thought it started with the starting pitching. Really gave you guys a chance to win all 4 games, including ultimately winning 3 games in one day on a unique Saturday.
Yeah. You know, that was a great weekend, no doubt about it. Weather was great, crowd was great, and like you said, you know, we got that first win on Friday. Felt like we had a really good chance to win Game 2. We actually gave up a lead in Game 2. It felt like, again, like we almost had Game 2 in hand. kind of gave up a lead. And truthfully, when we left that night, I was like, man, I kind of feel like they have the momentum going into tomorrow. But one of the things that I said to the guys, I said, there's only been a limited number of times in my career that I can remember suspending a game and having to pick it up the next day. And typically, my experience in that has been one team brings the energy and the other team has a little bit of a hangover from the day before. And typically that team that brings the energy, fuels itself throughout the day. And the cautious side of me was a little worried about the fact that I felt like they had the momentum from, coming back and tying the game late. And I was like, man, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle for us to win that energy battle tomorrow and get the day started off on the right foot. But I credit the guys. They showed up, and I'm probably almost every interview I do, I feel like I give a shout-out to one of my captains, but I'm definitely going to give a shout-out to Bryce Culp for, one thing is, if you got to win the energy battle, that's the dude you want on your team. So I felt like he showed up with the right mentality. It bled over, and a lot of other guys showed up with the right mentality too, but it kind of bled over, and we got off to that good start. Tried a little bit of an unconventional approach with our starting pitching, and that we gave the ball to Gio, and then asked him to kind of roll in to start Game 3. And he did a great job for us, kind of shutting it down and then getting us off to a good start in Game 3, and we were just kind of off and running after that. But again, in that series, 3 of those 4 games could have gone the other way.
Agreed.
We there was one game that we had that we won pretty comfortably, which was nice. But those other 3 games, they were a dogfight, and it's my hope that as many fights as we've been in this year, that's going to pay off for us. But as much as that series, we easily could have lost that series 3-1, and maybe even won this series 3-1. That's how tight some of those have been. So hopefully that's good for us in the long run. But it did. It all started with our starting pitching, and we played really good defense behind them and started to get some timely hits against Dort, which we had kind of struggled with the week before. So
I think honestly that you wish some of the results from the first 3 weekends were different, were wins rather than losses. I get that, but your predictions were pretty accurate because we knew going into Sagu that was a strong team. It would be, tough to have that as your first series of the year, but competed well. And then you predicted that the Dort series would be super even across the board. 2 teams that were pretty balanced, had very similar records, similar approaches, similar guys returning, numbers of guys returning, coaching staffs that know each other for better or for worse. And that series was extremely close. And we knew what we were going to get going into Dakota State. The team had a really, really good year last year, one of the best they've ever had. Even despite losing the series against you guys last year, turned that into a really good campaign, brought a lot of those guys back, and they look like they could be poised to do that again. So you're 3 for 3 on your predictions about how those things might go. And for me, that is pretty much how it went. Yeah,
and and I would definitely, I would say I would probably, in our locker room this year, I bet that's not the last time I referenced Dakota State because, we took 3 out of 4 from them last year, and they went on to have a great season. They won over 30 games last year. They had a 21-game winning streak at one point last year. That team is way better than they were when we saw them last year. And a lot of the same guys, they've got some additions and everything. But it just goes to show you, they did not hit the ball very well against us early in the year and lost 3 out of 4, which, we've had a series or 2 like that too. And then what they went on to go and do with their season last year was really, really remarkable, and it kind of just goes to show you, and that's something that I like I said, I'm sure I'll reference to our guys throughout the season, just the turn a season can take, and it just takes a couple things to get you going, and you keep focused on the right thing and move forward. They turned a rough start and a rough series against us last year into a really, really good season. So that I would imagine I would point to that a few times this year.
It's got to be something that you can point to as a parallel for you guys because they had a fantastic conference season. We're only a couple of games away from potentially winning the conference tournament and doing something even more than what they did. So, and I said this on air, so, if people are looking for bulletin board material, you can probably just go back and listen to my calls on Friday because I was saying, and I'm curious, I'm not trying to force you into saying something caustic or anything like that, but in my estimation, their conference, the North Star, is not known for being a great baseball conference. Bellevue is an elite team, almost always are. They were the champions last year, and Dakota State were the runners-up to Bellevue. It's hard to beat them. They experienced that firsthand. We know that. But aside from that, that is not usually known as a great conference. ours is. The KCAC typically is, especially if you go off of what you guys, almost all the coaches said at KCAC Media Day this time a month ago. There's only one team that's ranked in the preseason poll, yes, but the coaches all seem to feel that this is a really strong conference, top to bottom, in terms of parity, competitiveness, all of that. So hopefully that then bleeds into national recognition, teams appearing in polls, multiple tournament bids, all of that stuff. But that was kind of my point of comparison, was that, yeah, they did extremely well, had amazing numbers, a fantastic record. Their conference isn't as good. I think you have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt, but then I guess my question for you is, can you take some of that as a parallel going into what we assume to be a better conference?
Yeah, and absolutely. And man, I will tell you, you're not going to find anybody who thinks as highly of the KCAC as I do. It's a great conference, and there's great coaches and great talent up and down the board. I will tell you, though, to the eye test, Dakota State was quite a bit better than I was anticipating them being. That their starting pitching, man, it was really good. It was really, really good. And I think one thing that we saw from them too, we talk about trying to be competitive as many games. I can't remember all the scores from their 21-game winning streak, but
I certainly don't.
You don't win 21 games in a row without having to scratch and fight a few times. And what you kind of saw was a team that figured out how to win. And and when we had them down a couple times this weekend, they came back, they fought, they found a way, and just kind of that winning mindset tends to kind of take over. I did think their starting pitching was I think it would be in the upper half of what we'll see in conference play this year. So I think that was a good test for us. I was very impressed. Like I said, with the eye test, I was very impressed with what I saw from them.
I felt the exact same way. Again, I couldn't be at the games on Saturday. I was in at basketball, so just speaking about the two games on Friday, yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I mean, I'm going through all the numbers beforehand on Thursday night, prepping for the games and all that stuff, and again, you got to take some of it with a grain of salt, I think, but I think I'm more charitable than other people when we were looking at, 7 guys that hit 340 or better last year on their offense, and then, a couple of starting pitchers or pitchers that, threw 50-plus innings that had sub-3 ERAs, just baseline stats like that. Obviously, that doesn't tell the whole story, but I'm looking at that and then looking at some of the opponents and saying, okay, but I'm more charitable than most because I'm looking at those and saying, I don't care who you play, you still have to go out there and win, and they did much more often than not. They if not dominated, they at least performed more often than not last year, and those stats were really good. And like you said, we saw a lot of those guys come back out there over the course of this weekend, and they lived up to that, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, and we even, it says something for their stuff that, I feel like we even kind of figured out how they were trying to pitch us, and, they were still executing. I mean, that's the thing, right, is, hitting is not easy.
No doubt.
So, we to an extent, I'm not saying we were on top of everything they were doing or anything like that, but I do think we kind of figured out kind of what their plan was, and they just kept executing it, and the results speak for themselves.
Talking with some of the guys, I haven't talked to many of them this week, but after last week against Dort, that was something that I kind of heard, is that they individually and then as a team, you're able to pick up on a game plan. And for me, that's something that is kind of an inside baseball question that I'm not as familiar with. You can figure out, you can deduce as the game goes on or as the series goes on what a team's approach is in terms of collective hitting approach, collective pitching approach, defensive, schematics, things like that. That is something that you guys are able to suss out as a game goes on.
Sure, yeah, and a couple case in points is I noticed it kind of with the pitching this weekend. I mean, and why not? They, it was working for them, so they kind of stuck with it. And then the weekend before, I noticed probably Dort playing us defensively a little bit differently a little more aggressively than other teams have played us in the past. I saw a little bit of shifting on a couple of our guys and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it definitely, like I said, their game plan was there to be seen, but I don't think they were trying to fool us with it. It was hey, what we've seen and what we've seen so far in this series is you guys struggle with this, and we're gonna keep doing it until you guys stop struggling with it. And
makes sense.
So but that is a credit to the stuff that some of their pitchers have, So
I think sometimes it's obvious for even somebody like me watching from behind home plate. if a team can mash, like at Oklahoma Wesleyan at their peak or Ottawa over the last couple of years, to name just a couple, Kansas Wesleyan last year, they're going to go out there and they're going to try to swing it. Obviously, why wouldn't you? We saw Dort a couple of weeks ago kind of have the opposite approach, and they were very inclined to play small ball. They had 3 or 4 guys that were very willing to try to bunt for hits, which is not something that we typically see up and down a lineup. That was kind of an adjustment. But to your point about your defense, as that series went along, I even noticed the change. Third baseman Tyler King especially, got beat on 1 or 2 plays in the first game, but by the time that second game wore on, he was ready for it.
Sure.
Not trying to call him out. That's just an example of an adjustment that was made, because that's not something we see a lot, and then we saw that a lot over that series. He made 1 or 2 really good plays as the second game of that doubleheader wore on that were difference makers.
Yeah. The secrets start to get out by the end of a 4-game series, and then it's just, hey, I've got a good plan, and it's execution, right? And they executed well. I would say a couple of times that our lack of execution might have, like 0-2 pitches. We're not trying to throw it down the middle of the plate on an 0-2 pitch, right? But sometimes we don't execute, and I will also give them a lot of credit. When we didn't execute, they made us pay. Yeah. So.
Coming up this weekend, it was a little bit of a segue from earlier, but non-conference season is officially in the books. It's conference play or bust from here on in, 50-game schedule, and you're going to see every team in the conference, either home or away, or some of those unique split series coming up from starting this weekend. Bethany's first up, another home series for you guys against a team in the KCAC that you've had a lot of success against over the last couple of years. Good way to start off conference play, I would imagine. Yeah.
Last year we went out and played them. We won the series. We won games 1 and games 2. It was kind of a weird series last year because we had to go out there twice. The weather was not cooperative, so we actually went out, played a doubleheader, came home for a day or two, and went out and played game 3. If I remember right, we had a lead in game 3. Even we kind of left that feeling like we kind of missed an opportunity to sweep. And like I said earlier, sweeps are hard. So you never really go into a weekend saying, hey, I expect to sweep, or we need to sweep, or whatever. But every conference series you go in saying we need to win the series.
Sure.
And that's, I think, we, like you said, we were able to win this series last year, but it's really neither here nor there now. Other than, we need to obviously win some more games in conference than we won last year to get to where we want to go. So you just kind of go back and you look, hey, what we can't really afford to give games back that we got last year. So that it's kind of starts. This is obviously a series we need to win. And we're going to prepare to do so. We'll be able to work the roster a little bit differently, playing 3 games this weekend rather than 4. Hopefully that'll help us out a little bit. But yeah, so we'll see. It's like you said, it's a series we've had some success in the last couple of years, and it's definitely a series we got 2 from them last year, so we have to have at least 2 from them this year.
Here's my hardball question for you. One of the things that we saw from your team last year, until the last month or so, but consistently, and this was a good reflection of what you guys were doing and how well the team was playing and the energy, consistently won or competed in the first 2 games of the series, struggled to close it out in game 3, regardless of how the series was structured, either 1 game and then 2, or 2 games and then 1 into a conference weekend series. Even, against Ottawa, which were 3 separate individual days, won the first 2, lost the last one. So what do you think can change going into this year with such a new team to close it out on day 3 or game 3 more often than you did last year?
That is a good question. I think some of that honestly comes down to our coaching staff and how we manage the series. Last year we talked a lot, and we've talked a lot since last year, how our depth kind of ended up being one of our things that slowed us down towards the end of the year. And I think as we were noticing that throughout the year, we would almost kind of push our resources to the front of the series. And so that might have been kind of a reason that you might see that. But some of it might be a focus thing too. It's like going into game 3, there's always something big on the line. You've won game 2, and it's easy to let up and say, hey, we've won this series, right? Or you've lost the first 2, and it's, hey, we've lost this series. But unless it's that swing game, but even when it's that swing game, it's kind of like which team's going to be more focused, which team, and so I think the 2 things that I would say probably slowed us down a little bit last year were just like being focused enough to finish, and also maybe the way that we had pooled our resources for that series in the first 2 games. But we've got to get better about it. You have to take a mindset in of whatever you accomplished day one, whether it was winning the series or losing the series or putting yourself in a position to win the series, is only half the job. Day two is the culmination of the job. And I would imagine that teams that come up just short of their goals throughout the year can always look back at like a game 3 and say, we had that series in hand and we kind of gave up game 3 because we'd already won the series, or we kind of tucked tail because we'd already lost that series. So yeah, that's kind of like those ones. If you go back at the end of the year and look for the ones that you left laying on the table, I would bet you, I don't have any scientific proof of this, but I would bet you that it's probably that third game. So
it's definitely the kind of the consistent takeaway from last season is that won the series, which is not something that had always happened, right, if we're honest. But then that was a great stride forward, and then I guess the next step would be close some of those out and close out more series as the year goes on.
Got to finish, yep.
Here's my screwball question for you. Your professional baseball team made a pretty big splash over the last couple of weeks with a long-term extension for Bobby Witt Jr.
Sure.
That's got to be exciting.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Long-suffering Royals fan. Named my kid after George Brett. I mean, that's how much I love the team. It was good to see him making some moves in the off season.
Yeah.
I'm not a guy that like is World Series or bust every year. I've lived around here long enough to understand that. But man, what I just want to see from the team is I love the game, and just feeling like they put a competitive team out there. Year in and year out, and there's good baseball to watch on TV. I spend so much time around the field that I'm not one to typically come home in the summer and just lock in on the baseball game. But man, there's nothing better than having baseball on in the background all summer long. And when it's good and your team is winning more than they're losing, that's just a great way. It was a great way to grow up in this city. Love to see kids in the city growing up that way now. So I think that move showed me that they're committed to trying to do something good for the long term. So hopefully they're able to pull that off.
Your professional team's in better shape at shortstop than mine is at the moment. So congratulations to you for that. That's hard to get worse. Congratulations to you for that.
Good deal.
Avila baseball back in action with their first KCAC series of the season this Friday and Saturday, weather permitting. That's a big asterisk, so keep that in mind as we move along this weekend. Stay tuned to AvilaAthletics.com and Avila Athletics on social media for any and all updates. But as it stands right now, Bethany comes to town this Friday and Saturday. You can watch all of that action live and for free right here on the Avila Sports Network. That's your next chance to see Avila baseball in action after non-con is officially in the books. That's head baseball coach Matt Carpenter. This is Eye on the Eagles. We'll be right back with our next guest.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Carp. Welcome back to this episode of Eye on the Eagles, your all-access pass to all things Avila Athletics. We are live from Tanner's at Redbridge, just 5 minutes away from the Avila campus. I'm Sports Information Director Tim Hackett. Our final guest today, head men's wrestling coach Eric Mateo. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
I know it's a busy time of year for you guys this week. KCAC Championships on the campus of York University. The most important time of the year as you get ready for nationals in a couple of weeks. How are you and the team feeling getting ready for conference championship this weekend?
We're feeling good, feeling confident. Had a good stretch of training, about 2 weeks in between our last competition and the KCAC Championship, which is this Saturday. So really 1 week left in that training cycle, but really trying to peak at the right time. And I think we did a good job last week of training with some intensity and then, kind of tone it down and get feeling good and ready to execute on Saturday. So
we're going to talk a lot about what the tournament, what the championships look like, preparation for that as we go along here on the show today. But a lot to break down from over the last month. We've got your this month's the last 4 weeks schedule in front of us right here. We're just going to kind of take it from the top and go down, starting on January 20th, the Missouri Valley Invite 2-day event there. Always an elite field, you know it well. Lots of high-quality wrestlers come through there, and your team had a solid performance.
Yeah, this is kind of the mini nationals for the NAIA, of the, I don't know how many teams are there, 50, 60 teams. I think there are about 17 or 18 of the top 20 teams there. So it was good. It was a good competition. And, our star, Darius Webb, placed in the top 8. He placed 8th. And, if you place there, you are on the road to getting on the podium at the national tournament. So he's right there. He was wrestling lights out and, faced some tough competition. And we had a lot of good takeaways for him specifically because he was able to wrestle. I think he wrestled maybe 8 matches over the course of 2 days. Like I said, had some good takeaways that we can work on from that point in the season to where we are now. And then for the rest of the guys, it was good to kind of see like this is where we're at. We've seen the best competition that we possibly could have this year, and that includes the Missouri Valley Invite. So we're close to where we want to be, but we're not there yet. But it was good to expose them to that competition. Some of the best guys in the country. We had multiple guys right there wrestling with top 15 guys in the country, and we just couldn't pull out the W, which comes with time. So it was a good experience overall. One
of the things we had women's wrestling coach Zach Revere on the show last week. One of the things that we was a big takeaway from him last weekend at the Grandview Open for the women, just because it was kind of a similar setup. Loads of ranked wrestlers, just about everybody at some point, and so the athletes had to turn around after facing. If they're not ranked, then they're still a quality opponent. You turn around and face another one right after that, and that's kind of the same setup that this event was for you guys. There are just so many good athletes, good teams, so that there's no break. You turn around, and you take on or lose to one really good athlete, and you got to turn around and face another one right after that. And that makes it tough, but that is what you're expecting once you get into late season competition.
Right. It's not a tournament you're going to see a putty whacker in. Every match is a battle. So. But again, like it's just a little microcosm of the national tournament. You have to beat good guys to get on that podium, to get to that second and to that third day. Now national tournament's 3 days. So, again, good exposure for the younger guys on the team, and they haven't quite maybe seen, that level of competition up in their careers up until that point. So, we'll be back next year and every year, hopefully, and just building on what we were able to accomplish there this year. And again, we don't wrestle this season to place at the Missouri Valley Invite. We wrestle this season to place at the national tournament. So all of these things are stepping stones to get us to where we want to be, and it's just a part of the process.
And that's something that I mentioned, with Zach last week. Call back to something that you have told me in the past is that, maybe there's somebody that sneaks in, somebody gets hot and wins the conference tournament, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and gets into the NAIA tournament. So somebody that you maybe, quote unquote, weren't expecting gets in there, and maybe they aren't, a national figurehead like just about everybody else. But by and large, just about everybody that is in the national tournament is one of the best wrestlers in the weight in the NAIA, because it should be that way. And so that is, something that you told me even late last year going into this summer. to use your words, there are no scrubs in the national tournament because there shouldn't be. And that's what we want to see as fans. That's what we want to see as competitors. You want to go against the best of the best, beat the best to be the best mentality, and that is exactly what this type of event, the Missouri Valley Invite, is training all these guys for.
Yep, exactly. Like I said, you mentioned it. You have a tough first-round draw. And maybe you drop a match. It's not like you're going to have some slouch, some scrub, some putty whacker, as I mentioned on your first round backside. Every dude out there can wrestle, and really, that was the goal of going there. It was a measuring stick. Where are we? Now we know. Now we know where we're at. We had one placer out of 10 entrants. We had a couple guys not able to compete. One missed weight, and we've remedied that situation, a learning point for a young athlete, and then another guy that was just sick. So out of our 10 entrants, we had one placer. But like I said, good exposure for these guys to see, hey, where are we? Where do we need to get better? How far are we? We're not that far, and it was good to see that. Tyler Johnson is right there with the Briarcliff kid, who I think at the time was number 14 in the country, and really tight match, and we ended up dropping it in overtime. So we just have to. Now is the point in the season where we have to turn the corner on those kinds of matches. At the end of the match, we have to figure out how to get our hand raised. Excuse me, and I don't preach winning and losing. Of course, that's what everyone wants to do, is go out there and win wrestling matches, but it's more about just being the best you. At this point in the season, it's forget the expectations, forget the outcomes. You just go out there and be the best version of yourself, okay? And if you fall short, you fall short. You can walk away and say, hey, we held our head high. We left no stones unturned in our training. We left no stones unturned in that 7 minutes. And that's why this time of year is so it's important. These guys get defined by literally minutes.
Sure.
Their whole college careers are defined by a 7-minute wrestling match or a handful of 7-minute wrestling matches. So it is serious, and it is difficult, and hearts are broken and dreams are made, but one guy gets his hand raised in the end of the day. So I just preach to my guys, go out there, have fun, be the best version of yourself, and freaking compete. That's all we're looking for. Compete. Every moment in that match, every inch of that mat, we're competing, and no, we're not going to win them all. We're not. But it's
no one does.
No one does. But, you can feel a lot better about performing, and that's what I preach. Perform. That doesn't mean necessarily winning or losing, but what was your performance? Can you walk away and be thrilled with, be pleased with your performance?
And kind of one of the things that's so, I don't want to say different, but unique about this sport compared to a quote-unquote team sport, other sports that we have here at Avila, is that these events that you're building up to are so critically important on an individual level, because there's no team competitions anymore once you get into the conference tournament here this weekend. And so really, for all intents and purposes, I mean no disrespect to anybody about what you guys have done, seen, and accomplished so far to this year, but all the wins and losses to this point, they don't matter anymore for your guys that are going to be in the conference tournament this weekend. All you have to do is win however many matches are in that tournament and get your hand raised that number of times. And it doesn't matter how many times you've lost going into that, how many wins or losses you have going into the season. It helps, to determine if you're eligible, if you're going to make your cut. I get that, but assuming that you do make that mark into your top 12, all you got to do is win a couple of matches on Saturday, and that changes the whole tenor of this entire season.
Yeah, I think I agree with about half of what you said.
Fair enough.
Yes, it resets. There's a certain amount of allocations per weight, but going into that tournament, the mindset is everybody is 0-0.
Right.
Everybody. But saying all you have to do is win a couple of wrestling matches, that is a hard thing to do.
No question.
And it should be hard. It should be hard because, like you said, we're getting to the national tournament. The NAIA, and we want the best wrestlers there. So we really want to make sure that it's the best guys get into that tournament. But I'd hate to, not that you were dwindling it down, but I think it takes a lot to just win a couple of wrestling matches at the conference tournament, regardless of what conference tournament you're in. So, but again, if you fixate on that outcome of I got to place third or I got to place top 2, then it can play a little mind game on you.
Agreed.
Sorry. You have to just take it one match at a time, and even more so, just take it one position at a time. And you listen to the best wrestlers in the country, whether that's Division I, NAID2, or you listen to guys that are wrestling internationally, the best American wrestlers out there. They talk about being present and being grateful. They don't talk about winning and losing. They say, I'm going to go be the best version of myself right at this exact moment, be where my feet are, and focus on that, and focus on being with your brothers and the experience of being with your team and competing and doing it for the guy next to you. It just adds a little bit more oomph, and it means a little bit more when and you compete a little bit harder when you're doing it for your brother next to you instead of solely for yourself. Yes, of course you're doing it for yourself. You're the guy out there in the singlet with the ankle band on, alone, but you're not alone. Right? You got all the guys that have been by your side, and yes, we bring 12 to the conference tournament, but to get those 12 to where they are right now, it's taken all these other guys that are not in the lineup, So, yeah, a lot goes into it. And like I said, it's crazy because your career, it can sometimes and is defined by just a few minutes on a wrestling match. And that's another thing to keep perspective for the guys. Hey, this is a game. This is all supposed to be fun. Yeah, we want to compete and we want to win, but you can't take yourself so seriously.
Sure. Leading up to this conference, this week ahead of the conference tournament, though, after Missouri Valley, your next three events were all conference duels, which is interesting to have all that in a row. But 2-1 in those three events, and two really, really impressive wins, and one really, really good performance in a loss and against three conference opponents. So let's go through those blow by blow, I guess, really quickly, starting off with a historic night in Lindsborg for you guys against Bethany.
Yeah, 54-0, and we had one open, and it was a good performance. I was proud of the guys. We went out there, and it was a business trip. We took care of business. So went out there, wrestled hard, competed to the best of our ability, got the W's, celebrated with a little, not Schlotzky's, but I'm blanking on where we went to eat, but the guys enjoyed it. And then we came home and went right back to work.
Right.
But yeah, it was fun to be a part of that duel. It's, like I said, wrestling is supposed to be fun.
Something that I've talked with you and with Coach Revere about over the course of this season is that shutouts are hard to come by in this sport in a dual setting. You might have an open, might give another team a forfeit win. There's likely to be somebody good on the other side that's going to be able to pull out a match at some point. Bethany was not able to do that for various reasons. You guys won every single match that you competed in, and put a 0 on the board on the other side for the first time in program history. And I think, obviously there's a lot of nuance to that you and I have already talked about before, but there's something to be said for that, I think. It's a momentous occasion.
It was good, and, not only did we go out there and compete, but we sought out bonus points, and every match was bonus wins. Right. So that's huge, especially in those dual settings. And then, we go further down in our schedule. The next duel we had was against Friends, and the bonus points were the difference maker. Yep. We won 5 matches. They won 5 matches. But us giving up bonus, gave them the W. They earned it, but they beat us in the bonus point battle. So, some of those losses were unacceptable, and that's just the bottom line. The way they had a really great environment. They had a great crowd, and the message leading into that, because we watched the women's duel compete, and there was a great crowd, and we were chanting on the women's duel, and the women's team, they stepped up and they rose to the occasion, and they kind of silenced the crowd, which was awesome to see. And that was the same message, like, hey, because they were loud and rowdy in a good sportsmanlike way. It was fun. For me, going in before the duel even started, I was excited, and I told the guys, like, hey, this is a cool environment, right? Okay, let's go shut them up. Let's have some fun, compete hard. But for some of our guys, I think it took a toll on them, and they did not adjust accordingly. So, lesson learned. Regardless, we cannot give up bonus points like that, and I think we've remedied some of those situations. So, we'll compete against that team again this weekend, and hopefully we can get some of those back that we lost.
What did you learn then going into the next day when you went up and competed against York?
Yeah, one of the great things about wrestling is you often get quick turnaround opportunities like that, and so went up to York, and hey, it's a reset. Yesterday is yesterday. Today's a new day, and tomorrow will be a new day. So let's just go see what we're capable of. Let's see if we can bounce back and compete against a quality team, and the guys did that, so I was pleased.
Now that we're officially in the week of prep for the KCAC championships, We know at this point that every team can bring a maximum of 12 wrestlers to this event. How soon do you know, or I guess let's not speak in hypotheticals, we'll speak in practical at this point, how soon did you know who your 12 were going to be, and then what is that preparation like as you build up for this event coming up on Saturday?
Yeah, it's hard to put a pinpoint date on it. I would say we thought we knew, and then unfortunately Corey Holmes, had a season-ending injury, so he will not be competing in our 12, and I feel for the kid. He's been through a lot this season.
No doubt.
But he's tough, and he'll come back, and he'll be ready to compete again next year. But pretty much, it's fluid even now because, hey, we have a week of practice, and God forbid something happens, but that's just the nature of the sport. I'd say right now we have our 12 set, and at this point in the season, it's just getting those guys in and out of practice, feeling good, ready to execute, firing on all cylinders, and keep them healthy through Saturday and get their minds right. So we have our 12 pretty much set in mind right now, and that will probably be released Friday.
Okay.
Once we enter those into the tournament.
Okay. And I don't want to use the term complicated, but I feel as if this sport is convoluted in the sense that, there's a lot of ways that an athlete could make the national tournament from here. If you're coming from if you're a fan of one of our other sports, it's easy. If you win the conference tournament as a team, you're in the national tournament. And there's a couple of other nuances, and the KCAC does a lot of things differently, which is something that I've talked about a lot. It's a lot of variety across all the different sports. But leaving all that aside, there is no team component to this weekend. There will be a team champion, but that doesn't get somebody into the NAI tournament. You did a good job before we went on air breaking down how all the nuances of how somebody might make the NAI tournament from this weekend, because this is what decides it. This is kind of what I was saying earlier, is that, again, I don't want to diminish anything, but somebody could have a fantastic season, be ranked top 10 in the country or whatever, but if they don't compete, if they don't perform well this weekend, they might be left on the sideline and not competing at the NAI tournament at Hartman Arena in a couple of weeks. That is how important the conference championships are.
Yeah, yep. And so basically, each conference has a ranker, and it's usually a head coach within the conference, and those coaches get together and they rank the top 25 guys in the country. If you're ranked top 25 in the country, you earn an allocation for your weight in your conference. And every weight's different. Some weights at our conference have 3 guys ranked, some have 0 guys ranked, some have 1 ranked. So every weight's a little bit different, and you have to place, if there's 1 allocation, you have to win the tournament to go to the national tournament. If there's 0 allocation, only the KCAC champion goes. So, that was the case last year for Carter Brink. We had 0 allocations at 157 pounds. He was in and out of the rankings all year. He ended up winning the KCAC tournament, which qualified him. And then, for instance, we had, last year, just looking at last year's conference tournament, 3 allocations at 184 pounds. J.D. Perez from Ottawa, Darius Webb, and then Gabe Chesborough out of St. Mary. So top 3 go. So and every weight's a little bit different. So, but like you said, leading up to this point, the allocations are set. So everyone's 0-0, and that's the beautiful thing about it. You could have done more in the season. We didn't. We went out and sought out the toughest competition that we possibly could have. To try and give ourselves a leg up in allocations. Frankly, we just weren't there yet. Across wrestling against some of the best competition that NAI has to offer, like literally the best. And we just weren't there yet, and that's okay. We're in year 3 and we're growing, but that does not mean that we cannot, put our best foot forward and punch our ticket to the national tournament.
What are you expecting then this weekend? What do you think? I mean, I'm not, forcing you to say all right, we're going to have 7 national qualifiers or anything like that. But what do you expect that the team and you can take from all of those experiences, competing against some of those elite individuals and teams over the course of the year as you work on your last couple of weeks of preparation for the event this Saturday? What specifically are you looking forward to from your team this weekend?
You just said it, compete. And that doesn't necessarily win or lose. I just want our guys to go out there and believe that they can win and give themselves a chance to win in the last minute of a wrestling match or last 2 minutes of a wrestling match. I want to see us turn that corner. I know we can. I believe we can. I just want to see us compete for 7 hard minutes all day long. And, when opponents step across the mat from a guy in a purple or a gold or a black or a white and purple singlet, they know, hey, this is going to be a dogfight. regardless of maybe we've wrestled before. I want it to be a dogfight, and I want us to fight for 7 minutes or more if there's overtime through the echo of the whistle. And I think our guys are primed and feeling good and ready to do that. So
you have a number of guys that did compete at this event last year or even the year before, regardless of result. How much does that – how much can you take from this specific event? It's a different location, I get that, but it's the same idea, same structure, same format. Can anybody take anything that they've learned from competing in the KCAC championships over the last year or two into this now in year 3 for the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think about Barry Sanders, and he just, here's the ball after scoring a touchdown. And they coined the phrase, act like you've been there before. So it's that. It's literally that. And, you see the bright lights, and it might literally be the first time you've wrestled in a conference tournament in college. For some of those guys, it's their second or their third. Then they've experienced that before. So just that level of experience helps mentally. You've literally been there before instead of it being a brand new experience. Some guys can adjust to new experiences like that in terms of competition better than others. But once you've been there before, it helps. And also, in the end of the day, these guys have wrestled most of their lives. It's just another wrestling tournament.
And that's coming up this Saturday on the campus of York University, the 2024 KCAC Men's Wrestling Championships this Saturday. You can find all details once we get them on how to watch and follow along. Stay tuned to our social media for coverage throughout the day. I've really, really enjoyed following these events over the last couple of years, men's and women's wrestling. The conference tournament it's so much fun because easy for me to say as a non-wrestler and as a fan, but I know it's stressful to live it. But
no, it's the dream.
Yeah.
I truly love it. And this is what we do it for. The lessons you learn outside of just the wins and losses are huge. And in these moments, who you are is really exposed. So that's I live for these moments. I live to help these guys achieve their dreams and goals.
That's awesome. And I mean, typically we've had events here on campus, so I'm working on something or getting ready to go to something while I'm watching the live feed or the results come in over the course of these events. And again, it's just the drama's there, obviously, because unlike pick another open event over the course of the year, obviously we want everybody to win as much as possible, like you said, but understanding it's not always going to happen. Somebody loses a match, like, all right, cool, you can wrestle back, and maybe we'll see them in a placement match down the line. This is make or break. And so watching these results come in or watching the live streams as they happen, the drama is obvious. It's palpable even from however many hundreds of miles away I am.
Yeah, it's there, and the emotions are there. I'm not a very emotional guy, but, this tournament will bring it out of you, and the national tournament will bring it out of you, especially knowing what some of these guys have been through to get to where even just to patch themselves together physically and emotionally. And, these college athletes, they go through so much. So, and not just in the terms of wrestling, but, these young kids are dealing with so much. So just to see them overcome adversity, hit adversity, dreams are going to get crushed. And that's just the nature of the sport. But that's the beautiful thing about it. It's pure, in my opinion. So someone's dreams are going to get crushed. We just, hope is not a strategy, but we just hope it's not our dreams getting crushed. Yeah.
And at some point, we'll see somebody get those arms raised, like you said. And we're hoping that as many of our guys are on that final podium as possible and get into an even bigger stage in a couple of weeks.
Yep, absolutely.
As this Saturday on the campus of York University, the 2024 Men's Wrestling KCAC Championships this Saturday. Once again, we'll have all that information for you, details on how to watch and follow along once we have them on our website, avilaathletics.com. Stay tuned to our social media on Saturday for updates as the day wears on. That's this Saturday, and then in a couple of weeks, the 2024 NAIA Men's Wrestling Championships at Hartman Arena in Park City. That's what's coming down the line for Avila Men's Wrestling as they close out Year 3. Coach Mateo, thanks for joining us.
Yep, thank you, Tim.
Looking forward to seeing you and your guys compete this Saturday. That is head men's wrestling coach Eric Mateo. I've been Tim Hackett. This has been Eye on the Eagles. Thanks as always for tuning in. Thanks as always to Tanners at Redbridge for hosting us. We will see you next week, next Monday, 11:30 a.m., right here on the Avila Sports Network or live afterwards on our YouTube channel. Thanks to everybody, as always, for everything that they do to help make this a possibility and a reality. We'll see you next time. Until then, so long.